In 1949, a Chicago bakery owner named Charlie Lubin froze a cheesecake to keep it fresh for delivery, and by accident helped invent the entire frozen dessert aisle that eventually made scratch-made diner desserts feel like a lost art. Before that aisle existed, every diner in America had a glass case by the door, and what sat inside it changed, depending on who was working the kitchen that morning. Number 7 came in a paper cup you ate standing up at a bakery counter. Number 1 sat under a glass dome, so simple, nobody ever bothered to write down the recipe. Hit subscribe, and let's count down 10 forgotten diner desserts that used to fill that case. Number 10, rice pudding. Short grain rice simmered slow in milk and sugar with a strip of lemon peel and a pinch of nutmeg, until it turned thick and creamy enough to hold a spoon standing up. Served cold in a small glass dish, sometimes with a few raisins folded in, sometimes plain. It cost about 15 cents in the 1950s, cheap enough that a diner could put it on the menu as the free side of a blue plate special without blinking. The texture was the whole point. Not too loose, not too stiff, made in a big pot on the back burner all morning so it was ready by lunch. Rice pudding never really left every menu, but the diner version, made from scratch in a pot that had been going since sunrise, mostly did. What replaced it came in a plastic cup with a foil lid, and nobody had to watch a pot for it. Number 9, butterscotch pudding. Brown sugar and butter cooked down slow until they turned deep amber, then whisked into milk and egg yolks until it set into a pudding richer and darker than anything vanilla could manage. Served in a small glass cup, sometimes with a little whipped cream on top if the counter was feeling generous. It cost about 20 cents in the 1950s, and it was the dessert a kid ordered when chocolate felt too obvious. Getting the sugar to the right shade of amber without burning it was a real skill, the kind a diner cook took some quiet pride in. Butterscotch as a flavor mostly survived. The version made by actually browning sugar and butter from scratch, rather than from a boxed mix or a can, is the part that vanished. Number 8, chocolate icebox pie. Chocolate pudding made from scratch on the stove, poured into a graham cracker crust and chilled for hours until it set firm enough to slice clean. No oven required, which made it the pie a diner could turn around fast on a hot day when nobody wanted the kitchen any warmer. It cost about 25 cents a slice in the 1950s, topped with a little whipped cream that had usually gone slightly soft by the time it reached the table. The name came from an era when the icebox, not the freezer, was where you chilled something to set it. The pie is older than the refrigerator that eventually replaced the name. Icebox pies in general faded, as ovens got more reliable, and freezer desserts got more convenient. This one just quietly stopped showing up under the glass. Number 7, Charlotte Russe, a paper cup lined with a ladyfinger cookie standing up around the inside edge filled with sweetened whipped cream, sometimes with a maraschino cherry pressed into the top. Sold at bakery counters and diners across the Northeast, eaten standing up with a small wooden spoon, the whole thing gone in about 4 bites. It cost a nickel in the 1950s, cheap enough that kids bought them with their own allowance on the way home from school. The cardboard bottom could be pushed up from underneath to lift the whole dessert out of the cup without touching it, a small mechanical trick that felt like magic to a kid the first time they saw it. Charlotte Russe all but disappeared once the specific paper cups and the ladyfinger supply chain behind it stopped being worth a bakery's time. Ask anyone from Brooklyn over 70 what it was, and watch their face change. Number 6, vanilla icebox cake. Thin chocolate or vanilla wafer cookies layered with whipped cream and refrigerated overnight, until the cookies softened into something closer to cake than cracker. No baking at all. The refrigerator did the actual work over several hours, while nobody had to watch it. It cost almost nothing to make. A nickel, a box of wafers, and a pint of cream, which made it the dessert a home cook brought to a diner-adjacent church supper as often as an actual restaurant served it. Sliced on the diagonal, the layers showed in ribbons, cookie and cream, which was half the appeal on the plate. It required patience more than skill, and patience is exactly the ingredient that convenience desserts were built to remove. Icebox cake still gets made at home sometimes. It stopped being something a diner bothered to have ready. Number 5, grasshopper pie. A mint green chiffon filling made from creme de menthe and marshmallow cream, folded with whipped cream and set into a chocolate cookie crust, the color alone making it stand out in the pie case like nothing else there. It cost around 35 cents in the 1960s, a little more than the other pies, which made it feel like the fancy option on the menu. The flavor was sweet mint against dark chocolate crust, a combination that reads more like a cocktail than a dessert, because it more or less was one, minus the alcohol in the diner version. It had a real moment through the 1960s and into the 70s, showing up at supper clubs and diners alike as the pie you ordered to feel a little sophisticated. Tastes moved on from that specific shade of mint green, and the pie mostly went with them. Here's the part that isn't really about the dessert case. In 1949, a Chicago bakery owner named Charlie Lubin figured out that freezing a cheesecake right after baking kept it tasting fresh for days instead of hours, and named the company after his daughter, Sarah Lee. By the mid-1950s, frozen cheesecakes and pound cakes were sitting in supermarket freezers next to the vegetables, ready to thaw on a counter in under an hour. No baking, no icebox patience required. It didn't happen overnight, but it changed the math for every diner in the country. Why keep a baker on staff making pies from scratch at 5 in the morning when a freezer case could do most of the work for a fraction of the labor cost? The desserts didn't get worse right away. The reason to make them by hand just quietly stopped being worth it. Number 4. Ambrosia salad. Orange and pineapple segments, shredded coconut, and miniature marshmallows folded into sweetened whipped cream or sour cream, chilled in a bowl until the flavors settled into each other. Served as dessert as often as a side dish, depending on which diner and which decade you asked. It cost about 20 cents as a side in the 1950s, built almost entirely from canned and shelf-stable ingredients, which made it possible any time of year regardless of what fruit was actually in season. The name promised something almost mythic, food of the gods, for a dish built out of a fruit cocktail can and a bag of coconut. It showed up at diners, church suppers, and Thanksgiving tables with equal confidence. Fresh fruit got cheaper and more available year-round, and a salad built around canned fruit's convenience lost its whole reason for existing. Number 3. Baked custard. Eggs, milk, sugar, and a little vanilla, baked slow in individual ramekins set inside a pan of water so the heat stayed gentle enough to set the custard without curdling it. A little grated nutmeg on top before it went in the oven, and by the time it came out, the top had gone just barely golden. It cost about 15 cents in the 1950s, simple enough that a diner cook could bake a tray of them during a slow mid-morning stretch and have dessert covered for the whole day. The water bath trick was old-fashioned kitchen knowledge, the kind that got passed down by watching, not by a written recipe. Baked custard needed real attention at the right moment, pulled from the oven exactly when it barely set and not a minute later. Modern pudding cups need no attention at all, which is exactly why baked custard stopped being worth a diner's time. Number 2. Angel food cake with strawberries. A cake made from nothing but whipped egg whites, sugar, and flour, baked in a tall tube pan until it rose light enough to nearly float off the plate, then served in a plain slice with sliced strawberries and a little cream. No butter, no yolks, no richness at all. The entire dessert was about air and lightness, a genuine relief on a menu otherwise full of pie and pudding. It cost about 20 cents a slice in the 1950s, and it was the dessert a woman watching her weight could order without anyone at the table saying a word about it. Getting the egg whites whipped correctly, with not a trace of fat in the bowl to deflate them, was one of the harder things a diner baker did all week. Angel food cake from a box still exists, but the whipped that morning version, dense with real effort and light as almost nothing at all, belongs to a kitchen that had the time for it. Number 1. Devil's Food Cake Under the Glass Dome. A dark, deeply chocolate layer cake, moist enough to leave a shine on the fork, frosted thick and set on a pedestal stand under a glass dome right on the counter where everyone walking in could see it before they even sat down. It cost about 20 cents a slice in the 1950s, and the dome alone did half the selling. A cake displayed like that looked like it mattered, whether or not the recipe was anything special. Cutting into it released that specific dense chocolate smell that told the whole diner what dessert was on offer that day. It was the cake a diner put its reputation on, the one regulars judged the whole kitchen by. Chocolate cake never left the menu. The dome, the pedestal, and the specific ritual of watching a slice get cut from a cake you could see the entire time you ate your dinner, that belongs to a diner counter that doesn't exist anymore. 10 desserts, and every one of them came out of a kitchen that had the morning to spare. A pot that needed watching, a custard that needed exact timing, a whipped cream that needed real cream and real patience. We traded almost all of it for something that thaws in an hour, or opens with a foil lid, and it's hard to call that the wrong trade when you're the one working the counter alone on a Tuesday. But maybe there's a specific dessert you can still taste if you think about it long enough. A paper cup, a glass dome, a color of pie nobody makes anymore. Maybe you remember exactly which diner had the best one. Whatever it was, that's the part no freezer case ever managed to replace.